Hey folks, Sonic Fan here, and today I'm showing off my new board, which is the Sync Clean Pro version 1.0. This is the first test I've done with it. I just manufactured it for the first time last night, and it's a board I had to make for some other designs, and I decided to just make an offshoot to help people that have consoles with noisy synchronization pulses, which will make a video signal that won't line up. It'll be rolling or have other issues. Very common with arcade motherboards because arcades are designed specifically to match the monitor that they come with, arcade PCBs, and of course are not standardized. They didn't bother to standardize them to work well with any RGB monitor. And so this will help make a standard 60 hertz 5-volt TTL sync signal for your RGB monitor or your cabinet. It's not meant to work with SCART yet. I can make a little adapter board for that, but SCART actually functions a little differently. I don't believe it has a 5-volt TTL sync input. It usually strips the synchronization pulse from the composite video signal. So that might be a later thing if there's interest in that. But this is meant primarily for RGB monitors like this one. This one, the Sony PS1 screen is RGB and takes 5-volt sync. So does the Commodore, the 1084, as well as PVM monitors. They all take the synchronization pulse that this outputs. It's the same synchronization pulse that you get from like a Sega Genesis or a Super Nintendo. I think Super Nintendo will output it. I could be wrong about that. But like a Sega Saturn, a lot of the Sega systems will output, Master System will output 5-volt sync. Now, what I'm going to do is this is actually a 3.3 volt logic sync signal coming out of this Game Gear because it's using the McWill board to output RGB to convert the video, and that microcontroller on there is a 3.3 volt microcontroller. So that means you're going to have a 3.3 volt logic high, which means you're going to have a 3.3 volt TTL sync. That won't be a problem for most monitors. As you can see, this one is actually it's running through the converter, so I can't tell you. It would probably work fine without the converter. But what I am going to show you, and I don't have a bunch of arcade boards with super crazy synchronization pulses, but I'm sending this to someone that does, and I will have more tests from them later. But for now, what I can show you is what it looks like before and after on an oscilloscope. Keeping in mind that this is from a very clean source that is already coming from a microcontroller, a modern microcontroller, not an old game console MCU or ASIC. And you will see that it still has a little bit of noise, and this board cleans it up. So what I'm going to do is grab, I'm going to put my probe here. This is a little tricky to do with the camera, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my probe here on the yellow wire, which is the synchronization signal coming in. You can see the yellow wire here. It goes to this plug, which wraps around to this cable. So I'm going to go there first. I'm going to show you what it looks like on my oscilloscope, and then I'm going to tap it from the output of the board, and I'll show you that. So let's go over here and let's set up my camera in front of my oscilloscope the best that I can. Don't have a great setup for this, folks. By the way, Terminator, the arcade game on Game Gear, freaking rules. You should play it. So here is the sync signal coming in. And what you might notice, it's not super bad, but you'll see a tiny bit of jitter noise. There it is again. Anytime it goes over this threshold here, or under it, there you saw it there under it, that's jitter. That's unwanted noise that should not be in the synchronization pulse. And a monitor could interpret that incorrectly, and it could get confused. Another thing that you're not going to see with an arcade board is these actually might look totally fine, the rise and fall, but the rise and fall timing is actually off. And that's a huge problem. And monitors will misinterpret that. And so those are the things that this board fixes. Now what I'll do is I'll go over, and you'll notice, by the way, this is a 1.16 volt division here. So between this low point and this high point is about 3.3 volts. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this from the output. And here it is. You'll see there's a wider, what's called peak-to-peak because it's now a 5-volt signal. It's actually converting that 3.3 volt to a standard 5-volt sync signal. And you'll notice, I mean, jitter is non-existent in this thing. All the jitter that you saw, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't terrible. This is coming from a modern microcontroller. But those little pulses kind of above and below your threshold are not happening anymore. And that's really good. So we'll see how this fares when I have somebody throwing a bunch of arcade boards at it. But the way I've designed it is it should be the very best sync cleaner on the market as far as a small standalone sync cleaner. There are ways that you can do this through really advanced upscalers and stuff like that cost hundreds of dollars. But this is going to be priced, of course, much, much lower than that. And you can check out the link in the description to my website and the shop where I will be selling these. And order one for yourself. I'm taking pre-orders right now to do another batch. And it's a great way to make sure that all your game consoles play either on your RGB monitor or your RGB cab. All arcade cabinets are basically RGB. And yeah, I built this out of necessity because the sync pulses for a Genesis Model 1, believe it or not, are actually a little bit funky. And we're not happy with an 8724 chroma encoder. And this circuit actually fixed that. So, yeah. Proof is in the pudding for me as far as what I needed it for. And you can see it works very, very well with this Game Gear right now. So that's all for this video. You can like or subscribe or whatever if you want. And check out the other boards that I have that I'm making. There's a bunch of different stuff in my shop. And have fun with your retro video games and all that good stuff. This is Sega Sonic Fan, signing out.